You may have wondered about the roots of the giant CSX system. Perhaps you may have wondered whatever happened to some of the railroads you grew up with. This presentation could shed some light on both these thoughts, and at the same time bring back visions of many things that have vanished from the railroad scene. This 2-hour feature explains how the C&O and the B&O were first merged together, and how the Western Maryland came into the picture to form the Chessie system. See both freight and passenger trains in a time period that had far more variety in road names, equipment, and methods of operation. We bring a colorful mix of first and second generation diesels, and many of their paint scheme phases. Western Maryland was a small and well-run railroad that survived on coal and running fast bridged traffic with other connecting smaller roads. Much of the Western Maryland was deemed redundant, and it was largely eliminated in the Chessie system days. But we bring back some of that railroad's past back to the screen. Don't miss those beautiful B&O passenger trains that proudly carried the nation's Capitol dome on their nose. The Seaboard Coastline, or SCL merger, of the combined Atlantic Coastline and the Seaboard Airline began in the 1960s. We explain how the L&N came into the picture and how the Seaboard Coastline, the L&N, the Clenchfield, and several other smaller roads were marketed as the family lines in the 1970s. The mergers and their strategies are explained with some of the hidden history behind all the big changes in Eastern railroading. We use numerous maps and graphics created for this feature to put everything into historic and geographic focus. The SCL had famed passenger trains that maintained their popularity until 1971. After that, Amtrak maintained that high patronage of trains from the north down to the sunny south and into Florida. We all miss those big 20-cylinder SD-45s and early GE U-boats in the classic era, still using train orders passed up to train crews on the fly. The Family Lines era of the 1970s became the Seaboard system by 1982. Once CSX was formed, a few pieces remained to be integrated. For one, the Richmond, Fredericksburg, and Potomac, or RF&P, was a 113-mile-long double-tracked bridge line that neatly linked the northern and southern roads together. We bring the last 20 years of that road's independence to the screen. Today, with only two colossal roads sprawling over the entire eastern half of the country, there was nothing left to bridge on the RF&P, and so the RF&P became just a subdivision of CSX in 1991, after over 150 years of independence. The 1970s were an especially difficult time for many railroads. We'll explain the bankruptcies and little-known could-have-been mergers of that era. This was a minefield that Chessie and the Seaboard had to operate in. We explain some of the interactions with the large rivals, the Norfolk and Western and their partner, the Southern Railway. These two successful elements would form the modern era's Norfolk Southern. We review the government's Plan C for the Chessie to rescue two bankrupt eastern roads, the Erie-Lackawanna and the Reading Line. More maps give further understanding of how important this merger could have been to the Chessie system back in 1973. While Plan C finally fell apart and became a piece of Conrail, we review some of the ironies of how ripples of that not-to-be plan spread over several decades. All the merger partners in the Seaboard and Chessie groups managed to do quite well in that dangerous time period that threatened all roads with a prospect of nationalization. Fortunately, the Chessie and the Seaboard coastline helped anchor the industry in the east, while deregulation and revised work rule agreements brought the industry back to health. Don't miss this colorful and important section of railroad history.